right, welcome in. This is the elderly care live stream. For those of you that have seen any of these videos, I do a live stream series about doing elderly care for a loved one. Although I say it doesn't have to be a loved one, it could be anyone that you're looking to take care of. It just seems to be that mostly in these situations, it turns out to be a loved one, an elderly individual. Doesn't have to be elderly, but again, most of these situations seems like it's the elderly. It could be anyone that you're trying to look after, take care of at home, not in a professional medical facility for whatever reason. And we've looked at some of those reasons of why that might not be the best choice for the customer, or why, even if it is the best choice for the customer, it doesn't get chosen in that regard. So I have not been on here in a while. Let's start with some housekeeping stuff because I haven't been on here in a while. I think it's November now. My last video was in August, I believe. Was in Europe. I've been doing this channel all year from Europe, from Germany, Deutschland. And I'm back in the States now, and there's been a whole bunch of getting set up. I mean, if you've ever spent time, it doesn't even have to be out of the country, but a long time away from home, and then you come back, it then takes you even more, it takes you an amount of time to get reset up and established and get your things in order and da-da-da. So that's the period that I've been going through. You can see that the setup is different. I was doing these from my kitchen table, which there might be a return to some of those styles, but in the spirit of wanting to improve the product and wanting to do things at a higher level and always getting better, I'm now in an actual studio. It's a studio where I do my other podcast, A Locked Room, coming soon, and have things in a more professional manner. The goal for this channel would be to obviously inform and bring people who are interested in learning more about this topic, or like I've explained in other videos, this whole subject matter is something that's personal and close to me because I use my case study of my grandmother to kind of go through a lot of these scenarios and tell you about what my experience were. But my grandparents were also in elderly care for over 30 years. So even before this particular season happened in my life, it was something that my family, specifically my grandmother and grandfather, did professionally. So I grew up around it, and I got to see a lot of the way these things go, even before they were personally and directly affecting my life. And that's what I do. I come on here and I talk about these situations. But to put a pin on that particular point, the ultimate goal for this channel would be to grow in viewership and then have things in a position where I'm getting feedback from the audience and the audience is having questions. And I can then come on and just answer questions, bring in other professionals in the field or other people who have done this before in their own right, even if they're not medically board certified, CNA or RN or whatever it might be. It's very much a trial and error type situation, and not everything's going to be the same, and not there isn't a one size fits all, just like so many things in life, and specifically when things dealing with medical. That's why it's called a practice, because you're practicing. You're only practicing medicine. You're only practicing helping the customer get to a better position and give them some sort of quality of life in the most difficult season of their life. So that brings us to today's topic, and this is actually going to be a redo video from my last video, because what I noticed with my last video is that my connection must have been spotty or something, because it did not come through in the way that I wanted it to. It was like 12 frames a second and lag, and there's like digitization going on in the video, and team, we can't sleep on that. Okay, I can't let that happen like that. I got to come back and I got to do it the right way. And specifically for today's topic, because which is the topic I talked about previously, because it was so doggone important to Ruth. I would frankly be doing Ruth a disservice, not just the elderly community in general, but specifically Ruth Callis Kenton a disservice if I did not come on and speak about this properly. And that topic is going to be, let me pull it up here. There it is, animal therapy. Okay, so I love animals, specifically dogs. Uh, we always had different types of animals growing up: cats, dogs, fish. We had bunny rabbits at one point. My younger sister, who also assisted with Ruth in this last season of her life, grew up around horses. We've always had a affinity for animals, and frankly, I'll tell the internet right now, if you don't like animals, or if you're mean to animals, man, there's something up with you. Okay? I don't trust you. I don't trust you if you don't like animals. There, I said it. I'll take it a step further and say, if you're cruel to animals, it's more than a lack of trust. It's a full blown rejection. Okay, if you're cruel to animals, that is not something that I get down with. And Ruth always had a soft spot for animals too. She had a couple of dogs when I was very young. One specifically, his name was Brandy. Brandy was a Shih Tzu or a Cocker Spaniel, a small type of dog. And man, she loved that dog. My aunt, it was originally my aunt's dog, and then it turned into a situation where Ruth ended up looking after it. And man, she loved that dog. And even when that dog died, and I was very young when that dog died, it hit her hard, hit her very hard. She was, as I'm sure some of you who may be watching this video can attest to, that is a very difficult thing to go through. And what I've come to understand about animals, because we've had animals die before and they've made me sad, is that what I've realized about animals is that they're a part of the family, just a different part of the family. There's a great scene at the end, it's an older film, at the end of Lethal Weapon 3, where you've got Mel Gibson's character, Riggs, talking with Joe Pesci's character, and I can't remember Joe Pesci's character's name. But one of the things, one of the storylines in that film series is that Mel Gibson's wife was dead. And I can't remember if it was a nefarious way that she died or what, but she had died, and she died young. And Mel Gibson's character always struggled with that throughout the films, especially when it came to dating and moving on from her. And something that I think a lot of people can relate to, that type of struggle. And the last scene of the film is he's at her graveside, and he's trying to explain to her that there's another woman that he's met and that he's going to be moving on. But he doesn't know how to say it, and he's nervous to say it, and he views it as being like some sort of betrayal on his dead wife and their previous marriage. And Joe Pesci sees him out there and tells him this story about how when he was a kid, he had a pet frog. This is going to sound ridiculous, but if you see it in context in the movie, it's a really sweet moment. He used to have a pet frog, and everyone picked on him. He didn't have any friends, and one day he's got the frog on the front of his bike, and the frog jumps out, and he accidentally runs over him, and he was crushed by the death of that frog. And what he ultimately tells Mel Gibson's character in that moment is that he was just the same as having a friend, like a regular human friend. There were so many things that were the same, but he was just different, because he was a frog. And I think that's, again, YouTube that, look at that clip like in context, and their performance is certainly better than what I just summarized for everybody. But I think that that's a good way of talking about animals. They're members of the family. They're just different kinds of members of the family. And when one of them passes, it hits you in a lot of the same ways that losing a family member or a loved one can hit you. And so when Brandy died, Ruth took that hard, and she was able to get over it. But she always loved animals. And even, again, when I was a kid, we would have stray cats that came around, and she would put milk and water out for them. And I think my grandfather was a little less clingy to animals, or a little less warm to animals, but not Ruth. Ruth loved animals, and that's something we saw all the way up into the elderly part of her life. And so the animals that I've got on the screen now, these are her precious dogs that she had with her at the end. Um, Specifically Carmelo, and Carmelo is the white pit bull that you see in the first picture, the one closest to the left, and the one that she's got her arm around there in the second picture. And Carmelo is my younger sister's dog, and she loved Carmelo so much. She was, um, I don't even know where to start telling you about it, just that, but like just best friends. She spent most of her last couple of years sitting on the couch. As you've heard me talk about, she had limited mobility. She would have the headphones on. We had this headphone set because she was losing her hearing, that she could like listen to the TV and the news and kind of keep up with things that way. But she didn't have anyone in her life that would just sit there and spend the time with her. And what I mean by that is, even us, when you're working with an elderly individual, even if you come by and visit, or even if you sit with them for an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours or 4 hours, that's still just a set moment, and you can't do that. No one can do that consistently with somebody. It's just too much. The ask is too big, the lift is too heavy. But Carmelo could, okay, and he did. And so every day like clockwork, they would essentially get up together, and then he would be at her foot when she's eating breakfast, and she would toss a little food down to him. And of course, he's a dog, he likes that. And then she would go and sit down, and he would go and jump up on the sofa right beside her, and he would lay his head down in her lap, and she would tell him to do that. And she was always so pleased and impressed that he's going to listen to me. He's going to listen to me. Watch this. Carmela, put your head down. And he would put his head down, and she would feel a sense of accomplishment and reward because he agreed with her, to do that. And every time she had a doctor's appointment or something was going on, her first concern was going to be Carmelo. What's going on with Carmelo? As a matter of fact, she gave my younger sister only one instruction upon her death, okay? And that is to, quote, look after Carmelo. That's all she cared about. She didn't care if the house was going to catch on fire. She didn't care about anything else. She just wanted Carmelo looked after. And even in her obituary, she had very specific instructions to put in there, to my best friend Carmelo, you never left my side. And that's true, he didn't. Carmelo was there with her just like we were, just like the family was, all the way to the end. Again, he's a family member. He's just a different kind of family member. And what you ended up seeing with all of that was she had a friend. She had a friend. She had something that she could love, that was alive and would be there and would just understand and not be not hold her condition against her. And that's so much of what you're going to struggle with as you take care of somebody, especially if you're one of the only few that is doing the lift of the elderly care. Is it's gonna, you're gonna run into struggles of just having to put up with taking care of them. I mean, it's a job, it's work, and you're not going to always be in the mood to want to do it. But I tell you this much, Carmelo was always in the mood to just get on the sofa and put his head in her lap, and both of them be totally content. Animal therapy is such a huge part, and I'm going to go through and talk about the other two dogs you see there. but animal therapy is such a huge part of of a positive tool that can be used in this season for the elderly, and you see it all over the board. You see that elderly facilities, nursing homes, retirement homes, they have people come in with pets, or I would believe that they even encourage people to that have pets to bring their pets. I would go so far as to say that if you're taking care of a customer and you are considering putting them in a home and they do have a pet, they're not going to go unless the pet can go with them. I mean, and we get this, we all get this because most of us have had pets before and understand that connection, that relationship. But it was so critical to her mental and emotional well-being. You know, she held on as long as she could, as long as her body would allow her to, because ultimately that's what happened at the end, is her body just failed her. And luckily her mind never did, but her body did. And all of the conditions you've heard me discuss in other videos about her conditions and what she had to experience, so congestive heart failure and diabetes and these kind of things that um, she had to really fight and struggle with and wrestle with, and so did all of us that were helping to take care of her. And man, if Carmelo hadn't have been there, it would have been a totally different deal. I'll give you one other story. I'm going to talk about the other dogs. Um, Ruth was sick. I don't know what she had, if it was like the flu or COVID or whatever. We took her to the hospital so many doggone times between when we started taking care of her and when she passed. I mean, I'd say you were good for a hospital trip probably once every couple of months. So we'll say like quarterly. So you're averaging about 4 emergency room visits a year, and they were always for different things. Sometimes she would have a UTI. Sometimes it would be a flu or something like that. Sometimes it would be like a shortness of breath, and they wouldn't know what it's coming from. She went to the hospital one time, and they diagnosed her with low sodium, which I didn't know was a thing that could affect you in that way. And at the time, I was staying with her full time. My younger sister was she had her own place, and the dog would only come over periodically. And when she got released from the hospital, we were there in the emergency department. When you go to the emergency department, and you know this if you've ever been, it's a 6-hour deal minimum. It's probably going to be 2 hours in the waiting room, and then 2 hours of getting diagnosed, and then like 2 hours of observation before they can figure out if they want to get you a bed and keep you for the night, or if they're going to release you. But you're looking at clearing your calendar essentially for the day. If you're going to the emergency room, it's a whole thing. So she'd been in the emergency room all day. We'd been there with her all day. And upon her release, her only instruction to my younger sister was for her to get Carmelo and to bring Carmelo, quote, home. Okay, that's the only thing I want is the dog. Man, I can relate with that. I can absolutely relate with that. So the other dog that you see in that first picture is Bruno. And Bruno was a hairless, I don't know the breed, y'all. Someone's going to get it in the comments, though. Someone's going to look at that and say, boom, that's this. But Bruno was elderly, too. We used to joke because Carmelo is still alive, but he's like 15 or 16. He's up there. Bruno was about the same way, and then we had Ruth. So we had 3 geriatrics that we were taking care of at any particular point. And they all had their own things going on. Carmelo's not feeling good. He's got to go to the vet, and Bruno's got to go to the vet, and da-da-da. Bruno ended up dying the month before Ruth did. And when he died, she took that very hard. And we even think, looking back on it now, that probably had some effect on her, that probably put her in a mental or emotional place to say that it was time to move on. She loved Bruno as well, and Bruno stayed with her on and off for a year, maybe 2 years or so before she died. And she would treat Bruno just like Carmelo, and she just wanted to give them treats and have them come on the couch and lay with her, which Bruno would do too. And she was so sad when he died. She was so sad. And then that was in August of 3, and then in September of 23, Ruth ended up dying. And we're blessed to have Ruth as long as we did. We're blessed that we had Bruno as long as we did. But even Carmelo, and even before that, I'm jumping all over the place in the story. But if I was telling it properly chronologically, I would have also given the context of in June of 23, Carmelo one morning couldn't move. He was paralyzed, couldn't move. So Ruth is flipping out. My sister's flipping out. Everyone's flipping out. Carmelo's not moving. I don't know what's going on. My sister sends me this message, and she's not really one for the dramatic, but she sends me a message that says, Carmelo's not doing well. I wanted to let you know. And he'll have things where he'll eat something and he'll throw up, or maybe he's just, he's like quivering or something like that. But when she sent me that, I knew that it was serious because, again, she's not one for the dramatic. And anything, we are the kind of people, and maybe it's the way we were raised, but we're the kind of people that like to handle things at the lowest level. So if it's not something that's going to be, that doesn't need to get outside of the room that it's in, we're probably not going to speak on it and let it out of the next room. So when she messaged me, I knew that it was serious. I called her and she said, well, I'm taking them to NC State. We're, in North Carolina, and that's the best vet here in this state. I'm taking them to NC State. We'll see what happens. And so she gets them to NC State. And those of you who have dealt with pets who have gotten older and have these type of situations occur, you know that it can get very expensive very quick. So they want to run some tests, but they think that it's cancer. And so she's like, I don't know. You love the pet, but you're looking to spend $2, $3, $5, $6, $8,000, $10,000. And where does that ultimately? Where is that line ultimately, right? And they said, listen, we know that it's a financial commitment, but the doctor says, listen, you should run the test. We think that it's cancer, but it could be something else. So she ran the test, and as it turns out, he had a fluid buildup on his spine. They put him through a procedure, removed the fluid, and Carmelo, within like 2 or 3 months, made a full recovery. And he's still messing around, jumping around today. She's got him. She sent me some videos of him a week or two ago, if that, maybe even earlier this week. And yeah, man, he's still getting along fine. So Carmelo and Bruno were very instrumental for Ruth in these last years. And then the pit bull Labrador mix that you see on the far right, he's the OG. Okay, he's the OG. His name is Trip. Okay, and we had him as a family dog. And when John, Ruth's husband, died in 2011, early 2011, went to the hospital in December of 2010, and then in January 2011, gone. Ruth really had a hard time with this, as you can imagine anyone would. They had been married 60 years and had just built their entire life together. And he was the patriarch of the family and very much had that kind of energy about him, and very influential person, not just within the immediate family, but also amongst his siblings. John was always the kind of person that if somebody needed financial advice or they needed to navigate something, in the real world, especially as it deals with like institutions, they gotta speak with a lawyer about something or go through a government process or something like that. John was always the one, the brother that they would reach out to, or for my parents and their siblings and my aunts and uncles, that is, who they would reach out to. And John would usually have a good baseline on where you should start with these things. So when he died, it left a tremendous gap, not just personally, but also in all of these other realms of the family. And Ruth gravitated to Trip. And I think Trip was the first step in helping to heal her heart, because again, he was someone that could just be there for her and didn't have to squeeze it in between the workday and between going to the grocery store and between all of the things that humans have to do. She loved Trip and spent a lot of time with Trip, and he loved her right back. And it was a lot of the same things of sitting on the couch with me, or laying on the floor at my feet, or getting in the bed with me. Getting in the bed, man. Who doesn't like that, right? So, someone's gonna blow me up in the comments. Oh, that's disgusting. I don't like that. Hey, have at it. Go ahead. But yeah, like Trip would jump up on the bed. So would Carmelo and Bruno, and stay with her, and that kind of thing was just absolutely critically important for her in this last phase. So, um, if you are working with a customer and there are no pets around, and if you can do it in a way that is going to be beneficial for the customer and the pet, because that's the other thing, you don't want to disadvantage the pet or put the pet in some sort of situation that is not healthy for them. I would absolutely consider looking into the adoption of a pet. And again, this is separate from the medical and the financial and all of the other items that we usually discuss on this channel. But there aren't, that mental emotional piece, there aren't a whole lot of things that you can do. If the customer is dealing with a fractured relationship with a family member, yeah, that's something that could be looked at or worked on. Or even if you're yourself have some sort of thing to work out with the customer, yeah, that's something that can be worked on. But this is something that is just uh, pure joy for the customer. There's an old joke. I said it on the last video. I'll say it again, and it's something to the effect of, someone's gonna kill me in the comments for this, but there's an old joke that says, lock your dog in the trunk of your car for an hour, and lock your wife in the trunk of the car for an hour. And at the end of that hour, when you open it up, which one is happy to see you? Dogs they don't have a memory. They don't hold anything against you. They're just pure love, and they want to be loved. And when you're with somebody in this season, that's incredibly critical to consider how you're gonna how you're gonna navigate and combat that. So, again, I'll go to my last slide here the same way that I always do. New set, same slides, questions, Mario at the Alpha Italian. Give me your name and location. I want to know where they're coming from. And I'm going to get back on this channel and be more consistent. And there might be some more changes coming to the production or the way that we do this, because I want to keep things improving, and I want to give you the best information that I can share so that the customer wins. We want the customer to win. Thank you, everybody. Take care. See you again soon.